Resident Evil is a franchise that spanned over 29 years, almost 30 games, including 10 mainline entries, a Hollywood film series, animated movies, and a Netflix show, and honestly, probably a few more things that Capcom themselves have forgotten about. With Resident Evil 9 Requiem being released on the 27th of February, this is the entire Resident Evil timeline explained. Our story starts in 1919, before any of the mainline games, and frankly before any sorts of modern medicine. People were just dropping like flies from things like TB or the plague. It's here we meet a woman by the name of Mother Miranda, who is grieving the loss of her daughter who passed away from the Spanish flu. Amongst her grief, she stumbles across something known as the mold. Now, the mold causes her to have superhuman regenerative abilities, so she takes this newfound mold and starts experimenting on the people of her village, with the main goal of resurrecting her daughter. In 1950, Mother Miranda was just chilling in her village, creating her test subjects, when she was approached by a man by the name of Oswell E. Spencer. Mother Miranda shared with Spencer her experiments, and he became really interested in the idea of the next step in human evolution. Whereas Mother Miranda's goal was to resurrect her daughter, Spencer had completely different ideas. Along with three other guys known as Edward Ashford, James Marcus, and Brandon Bailey, they went to the west of Africa where they discovered the progenitor virus. Spencer went on to form Umbrella Corporation, where he served as its CEO and president. 10 years later, in the swinging 60s, Umbrella went into its secret project era. Now, there were two projects running alongside each other in the 60s. One of those was known as Project Code Veronica, while the other one was known as Project W. Both of these projects used the progenitor virus in the hopes of creating the next step of human evolution. Project Code Veronica's main goal was to create an heir to the Ashford estate. This eventually led to the creation of Alexia and Alfred Ashford. Project W was a little bit similar, except they were taking children and experimenting on them. They were given the Wesker last name. Notably, ones to remember is Alex and Albert Wesker. Yeah, that Wesker, the one that likes sunglasses indoors. We're now in the 1970s, and humans have done probably the most horrifying thing they can create. Grease the musical. No, the 1970s brings us the T-Virus. The T-Virus, or the tyrant virus, was created by mixing the progenitor virus found in Africa with the DNA of a leech. The man responsible for creating the T-Virus? Umbrella virologist James Marcus. Marcus was eventually betrayed by Spencer's, and they took his T-Virus research and took it off into the Arklay Mountains, where it was worked on with Albert Wesker and William Birkin. Marcus was then murdered a few years later by Albert Wesker. In the 1980s, William Birkin, the man who betrayed James Marcus in the 1970s, was now off in the Arklay Mountains carrying on his research with the T-Virus. Through his experiments, he eventually led him to the G virus, also known as the Golgotha virus. William Birkin carried on experimenting with the G virus in the Arklay Mountains on creatures and creating bioorganic weapons, or what we like to call BOWs. Alexia Ashford, one of the people of the Ashford estate we mentioned earlier, she took the T-Virus and created the T-Veronica virus. She used this on her father in the hopes of resurrecting him, but surprise surprise, it didn't work and just turned him into a horrible monster. So she did what any sane person would do and injected herself with it. She eventually then went into cryo-sleep, where she remains for now. It's now 1998, and we've arrived at our first mainline entry into the Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 0. James Marcus was experimenting with leech DNA. After becoming a huge leech T-virus monstrosity, he set out for revenge against Umbrella. His first target was an Umbrella train known as the Ecliptic Express. and this led to a huge T-virus outbreak on the train where all passengers were infected. During the midst of all this, a woman was sent in to recapture a prisoner by the name of Billy Cohen. The team she was working for was known as the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS for short. This woman was named Rebecca Chambers. Now, Rebecca was sent in to find Billy Cohen and bring him to justice when they were both caught up in this big T-virus outbreak and were forced to work together. Rebecca and Billy eventually find themselves at an umbrella facility filled to the brim with T-virus monstrosities. They fight their way through the facility, eventually killing what was left of the infected version of James Marcus. The lab eventually self-destructs and Rebecca lets Billy go when she realizes he's just a pretty chill guy. And then Rebecca makes her way towards the Arklay Mountains Spencer Mansion. Resident Evil 1 takes place in the previously mentioned Arklay Mountains at the Spencer Mansion, where STARS Alpha Team go searching for their missing Bravo team. I recently completed a playthrough of Resident Evil 1 over on the channel if you want to go check out that video, by the way. Arriving at the Arklay Mountains, the STARS Alpha Team are eventually attacked by zombie dogs, also known as Cerberus dogs. Chris Redfield, Albert Wesker, Barry Burton, and Jill Valentine all find themselves running towards the Spencer Mansion for safety. Chris, or Jill, depending on how you play the game, spend the night searching through the mansion, uncovering its secrets of the testing that Spencer had going on there. Realizing that this mansion is just a big cover-up for Umbrella's secret experiments, they find themselves confronted by Albert Wesker, who was in on it all along. Yeah, the Albert Wesker from Project W earlier. Wesker then releases a tyrant, only to be killed by it himself. Chris, or Jill, again, defeat the tyrant and then escape the mansion to be rescued. They sail off into the sunset to live happily ever after as the mansion explodes behind them, leaving Wesker in the rubble. For now. After the events that unfolded at the mansion, Umbrella had serious beef with William Birkin and wanted him gone. So they sent a team led by a guy named Hunk. Yeah, Hunk was his actual name. They sent Hunk to Birkin's lab to dispose of him, but the mission wasn't exactly successful because just before he was about to die, William Birkin got a handful of the G virus and injected himself with it. During his monstrous rampage as a G virus infected monster, he smashes a bunch of vials containing the T virus. The T virus was then consumed by some rats. Then these rats led to the spread of the outbreak in Raccoon City, the virus that turned everybody into zombies at the mansion. Shortly after the events of Resident Evil 1, the remaining STARS members requested an investigation into the Umbrella Corporation because, zombies and Cerberus dogs aren't exactly up to health and safety. The group goes their separate ways to conduct their own investigations. Jill started her investigation in Raccoon City, and Chris goes off to Europe, which leads us to Resident Evil 2 and 3. Chronologically, it goes in the order of 3 before 2, but I've got 2 and then 3 on my list, so deal with it.
If your teeth fell out and then you became a zombie, would the virus still spread? Because you can't, bite people? Avoid your teeth falling out by avoiding carbonated, sugary energy drinks and swap it for a sugar-free, water-based one instead. If you head on over to w.gg and pick yourself up a starter kit, you can use code LEAPMAN for 10% off your order. Link is in the description.
You ever start a new job and you think things couldn't get any worse? You're late, you forgot your boss's name, and you're always messing things up. Well, a first day on the job couldn't have went any worse for Leon Kennedy. Leon Kennedy just happened to start his first day on the job at Raccoon City Police Department the same day as the T-virus outbreak. While trying to figure out what the hell is going on, Leon meets a woman by the name of Claire Redfield, the sister to Chris Redfield. Claire is looking for her brother Chris, so both her and Leon go their separate ways. They follow a similar path, but they're both looking for different things. Amongst his travels, Leon meets a mysterious woman called Ada Wong. Ada tells Leon that she's investigating the company Umbrella and needs a sample of the G virus. And while Claire meets a young girl named Sherry. Sherry is the daughter of William Birkin, the man who turned into a giant monster and knocked over the jars of the T virus when he was shot by Hunk. And Sherry shares with Claire that she too is infected with the G virus, because I wouldn't put it past William Birkin experimenting on his own daughter. So Leon, along with Claire and Sherry, all go looking for a vaccine. They manage to find an Umbrella facility where they do get a vaccine which cures Sherry, and that's when Ada swoops in and steals a sample of the G virus and is like, "Bah, Felicia." The facility then self-destructs, and Claire, Leon, and Sherry all fly off into the sunset and live happily ever after. For now. Resident Evil 3. Now, Jill Valentine was balls deep in Raccoon City when the outbreak started, and if the whole city turned into zombies wasn't enough, Umbrella has created a secret BOW. A special kind of tyrant known as Nemesis was created with one goal: to eliminate the remaining STARS members. Jill gets wind that the government are about to nuke Raccoon City to stop the outbreak. So along with the help of a man named Carlos, she defeats Nemesis and manages to escape Raccoon City just before its explosion. A few months after the incidents at Raccoon City, Claire Redfield heads off to Europe in search of her brother Chris, but on her way she ends up being captured by Umbrella and sent to a place called Rockfort Island. Now at Rockfort Island is the Ashfords. Remember the Ashfords from earlier? One that got all injected and went into cryosleep? Well, the other one, Alfred Ashford, has been running the show while she's been asleep. Oh, and he also cross-dresses as his sister, so yeah, there's that as well.
Alfred! You cross-dressing freak!
Chris makes his way to Rockfort Island to save his sister, where he bumps into a very alive Albert Wesker.
Hello, Douglas.
Victoria! But I thought you were dead!
Wesker now has superpowers, which he gained from a unique strain of the T-Virus. And even though he doesn't work for Umbrella anymore, he definitely is still a bad guy. Chris manages to get away from Wesker and he does meet up with Claire, and they both work together to kill the very evil Alexia Ashford. The year is now 2004, and Leon has now got himself both a sick new job and a swanky new jacket. Leon, who now works for the United States government, is given the task of saving the president's daughter, Ashley. Ashley has been kidnapped by a mercenary known as Jack Krauser, who, completely off subject by the way, Jack Krauser is probably one of my favourite characters in the Resident Evil franchise. He's just so... Krauser kidnapped Ashley on behalf of a man named Osmond Sadler, who works for a creepy cult known as Las Illuminadas, which translates to, the Illuminati. The Illuminati cult basically revolves around a mind-controlling parasite known as the Las Plagas, which they infected Ashley with. So the plan was to infect Ashley with Las Plagas and then give her back to the president, infecting the whole of the United States to control them. Which, that's probably one of the most normal sounding plans in Resident Evil, to be fair. And it's up to Leon to save Ashley and bring her home. But guess who Leon bumps into in Spain? His old friend Ada Wong. Now Ada Wong tells him that she's looking for a sample of the Las Plagas parasite, and she says it's for her boss, Wesker? Yeah, Wesker is Ada's boss now. Ada does eventually manage to get a sample of the Las Plagas to give to Wesker, but it's not like the strongest form of the Las Plagas. It's only like a small, kind of weaker version, because Wesker tells Ada that he's begun working for a company called Tricell. So Ada gives him the weaker version and then gives the stronger version to an unknown source. All the while, Leon, being the action hero he is, manages to kill Sadler, destroy what was left of the cult, eradicate the Las Plagas virus pretty much, and save Ashley and cure her. And they hop onto a jet ski and in a bit of a running theme with these games go off into the sunset. 2005 brought around the Terra Grigia panic. This was a T-virus outbreak that happened on the floating city of Terra Grigia. The outbreak was caused by a terrorist organisation known as Veltro. The terrorist group Veltro had orders to carry out this attack from the Federal Bioterrorism Commission, or FBC for short. FBC, led by a man named Morgan Lansdale, wanted to boost the importance of his organisation. Luckily, an agency known as TerraSave spent most of their time helping survivors. One survivor to note is a little girl by the name of Natalie. She'll become important in our story later. Eventually things got out of hand and Lansdale ordered a satellite-wide destruction of the city. By the time of 2006, bioterrorism basically just becomes everyone's problem. Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine were now working for the BSAA, which stands for the Bioterrorism Security Alliance. It's basically STARS, but it's international and it's got better funding. They were tasked with the mission of uncovering evidence that linked the Terra Grigia panic to Veltro. During the investigation, they uncover the whole truth about Lansdale planning the whole thing all along. But not only that, they find that Clive R. O'Brien, the head of the BSA, was pulling the strings on Veltro all along. So Jill and Chris prevent anyone else from getting their hands on the T-virus, only to be double-crossed by another BSAA member named Jessica. Jessica, who has a sample of the T-virus on her, then gives it over to Tricell, the company that Wesker said he was working for at the end of Resident Evil 4. And then Jill Valentine gets some juicy intel about the possible location of Oswell E. Spencer. The same Oswell E. Spencer that basically started all of this. So Jill Valentine goes to track him down, but by the time she gets there, she realizes that Oswell E. Spencer is already dead. He's been murdered by Albert Wesker, who had a bit of a tantrum when he learned about his true creation in Project W, kinda like how Sephiroth does in Final Fantasy VII. So Jill and Wesker then get into this really big fight that results in the both of them smashing through a window, seemingly dead. But no, nobody dies that easy in Resident Evil. Jill is then taken back to Tricell by Wesker to be his test subject, but her body is resistant to the T-virus, so he just brainwashes her instead. In Resident Evil 5, Chris is still working for the BSAA, and he is sent to Kijuju, Africa after there is an outbreak there caused by Tricell. While in Africa, he teams up with another BSA agent known as Sheva. Chris discovers some dodgy dealings on the black market with bioweapons, and a new virus. Similar to the Plagas found in Spain, this virus is called the Ouroboros. They learn that Tricell and Wesker's goal is to launch missiles containing the Ouroboros virus all over the world. Wesker's plan is pretty much kill humanity, perfect the rest. Chris is shocked to find that his former partner Jill actually isn't dead, and he does manage to free her from Wesker's control. Chris and Sheva then put a stop to Wesker's plan, and this makes Wesker desperate, so he takes the Ouroboros and he injects himself with it. But even after all that, it still wasn't enough, and Chris and Sheva managed to defeat him using RPGs and a volcano. And now Wesker is dead. Like, actually dead this time. Oh, and also Chris punches a boulder. Albert Wesker might be dead, but do you remember Project W? And there was two notable names. There was Albert Wesker and Alex Wesker. Alex and Albert Wesker. Well, Alex Wesker is still very much alive. She's been pretty quiet for a while because she's been dealing with an illness that will eventually kill her. So to try and put a stop to this, she developed the T-Phobos virus. Her goal was to create a superhuman being and transfer her consciousness to it. She was carrying out these experiments on a mysterious island. They were abducting people at parties and then bringing them to this island to experiment on them. And Claire Redfield found herself being abducted and brought to said island. Claire and another woman named Moira thought to themselves they were a bit screwed on this island until Barry Burton from Resident Evil 1 at the Spencer Mansion showed up. Now Barry said that he was looking for his missing daughter, Natalie. Remember the Terra Grigia panic when one of the girls that was saved's name was Natalie? Well, it turns out Natalie is the perfect candidate for this test of Alex Wesker to transfer her consciousness. In the end, Claire, Moira, Barry and Natalie all defeat Alex Wesker and avoid any consciousness transfer. They all move on with their lives, but what they don't realise is that Alex Wesker's consciousness had already been transferred to Natalie. Resident Evil 6 is when Capcom decided that they don't want it to be a horror franchise anymore and they want it to be an action franchise. And frankly, a lot happens in Resident Evil 6 and it's kinda hard to keep up. So I'm gonna thank you all in advance for bearing with me and giving me patience here while I try and unpack this. So the year is 2013 and a new virus has been created, the C virus. Sherry Birkin, the young girl from Resident Evil 2, the daughter of William Birkin, is now a grown woman and is working for the Division of Security Operations. Sherry is tasked with going to Edonia to meet with a man named Jake Muller. Now, Jake Muller is kind of important because it turns out that Jake Muller is actually Albert Wesker's son, and because of that, his blood is kind of special and it might be the thing they need to cure the C virus. So, shortly after meeting, Sherry and Jake are then ambushed by Neo Umbrella. So it's kind of important to remember at this point, Umbrella is a dying company, so Neo Umbrella is kind of like the people that are just still clinging onto hope. So Neo Umbrella kidnap Jake and Sherry and take them off to China. But guess who else is in Edonia when they get abducted? Chris Redfield. He's there doing BSAA work, being a busy man as you do. Fast forward a few months later into 2013, the US president plans to tell everybody the truth about what happened at Raccoon City all those years ago. So a man by the name of Derek Simmons infects the president to stop the truth being revealed. This leads to an outbreak in the city of Tall Oaks, and just like Raccoon City, they bomb the whole city of Tall Oaks to just brush it under the rug as they do. Our old buddy Leon Kennedy was actually in Tall Oaks when all this was happening. Luckily he was able to escape before the blast. But Leon made it his mission to get revenge for the president and kill Derek Simmons. By the end of 2013, the world is basically going to shit. With the C virus basically consuming all of China, Leon manages to track down Simmons, who at the time is a giant monster, and kills him. Jake and Sherry also managed to escape Neon Umbrella by killing a giant monster. Oh, and Chris is now also in China, fighting a giant monster. After all the giant monsters are defeated, our heroes take a much needed breather. They take a sample of Jake's blood and use this to make a vaccine for the C virus, restoring things back to normal for now. Remember Mother Miranda from the very beginning of the video? Well, it turns out Spencer wasn't the only one that approached her about her mold. An underground crime group known as The Connections contacted her many years prior to 2017, and they made her a deal. They said, give us a sample of your mold and some DNA from your daughter and we will help you revive her. Did they stick to that deal? No, of course they didn't. They took the mold and some of the DNA from her daughter and started experimenting on children. Through these experimentations, they were able to create children with mind-controlling powers. The most successful of these test subjects, a young girl named Evelyn, and Evelyn became the #1 target of the BSAA and also a new company that had just formed called Blue Umbrella. And don't let the Umbrella name fool you. Blue Umbrella are actually the good guys. I think. Anyway, Evelyn was being transported on a cargo ship where there was an outbreak on board, killing everyone on the ship apart from a woman by the name of Mia Winters. The ship crashed and Evelyn washed up on shore in the south of Louisiana, where a man named Jack Baker found her and brought her into his home for safety. Jack would soon later come to regret this decision because the mold takes control of his entire family, besides his other daughter Zoe, who remains unaffected from the mold. In 2017, Ethan Winters receives an email from his wife Mia saying that she's in Louisiana at the Baker household and needs his help to come rescue her. And oh boy, Ethan has no idea what's waiting for him there. I think we can all take a second to agree that Resident Evil 7 was probably one of the scariest of the franchise because it was such a different take. Ethan arrives at the Baker household only to be viciously attacked by Jack Baker. Now this is where things get a little bit confusing because Ethan actually died during this fight with Jack Baker, but we as the viewer see him get up and just brush himself off when in reality he died. And it was the mold that brought him back to life. Ethan carries on pushing through the house to save Mia, which he does with the help of the non-infected daughter Zoe. Ethan ends up weakening Evelyn, turning her into a giant monster, just as Blue Umbrella shows up to kill her. And Blue Umbrella's newest employee is the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Redfield. Despite nearly 100 years of testing, Mother Miranda was no closer to resurrecting her daughter. She was yet to find the perfect vessel for her daughter. All the tests that she'd done with the mold on her village just turned people into crazy werewolf-like creatures called lichens. Some other people, like the Dimitrescu family, who the internet thirsts over, would go on to get superhuman abilities, but still not a good fit for Mother Miranda's daughter. But Mother Miranda learns of a child that is a perfect fit, a child that is born of the mold, and that child is the daughter of Ethan and Mia Winters, Rose Winter. Mother Miranda devises a plan to kidnap Rose, so she takes the DNA of Mia, disguising herself as Mia, and infiltrates the Winters household. Now Ethan is tricked. Ethan is completely fooled by this disguise until one night Chris Redfield and Blue Umbrella burst into his home, gunning down Mia. Ethan wakes up completely confused. Chris Redfield's just murdered his wife, his daughter is missing. So Ethan makes his way to the village where Mother Miranda has spent hundreds of years doing these tests. And Ethan fights his way through this village, defeating the Dimitrescus, defeating Heisenberg, the man who controls machines. And just as he's about to save his daughter, Mother Miranda reaches in and pulls out Ethan's heart. Now to Chris Redfield's eyes, he thinks that Ethan is dead. Chris Redfield and Blue Umbrella send a team into the village to eradicate it of all monsters, and Chris plants a bomb with the intention of destroying the whole village, and that's where he finds the real Mia locked away. It's around this time that Ethan comes back to life, and he's hit with the bombshell that he didn't die today. He died all those years ago to Jack Baker's hands. But this doesn't stop Ethan from saving his daughter, so Ethan defeats Mother Miranda and stays behind with the bomb to blow up the village, sacrificing himself in the progress. And Chris Redfield, Mia Winters, and Rose Winters leave the village. And that, ladies and gents, is pretty much everything you need to know before the release of Resident Evil 9. I will be playing through the game when it comes out over on the channel, so if you'd like to join me, feel free to subscribe and come say hey. And as always with these kind of things, there probably is a few things I've missed here, maybe notably from things like DLCs. So feel free to comment down below any other important key moments you think people might need to know. But yeah, this video was super fun to research, super fun to make and edit, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So I'd like to say just a big thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.